Dolphins fan. Let's go! What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one, a special edition as the man, the myth, the legend himself, one of the best in the biz, Ryan Roberts, the man of many titles now. You've been watching him over the years on this channel. The titles have grown. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I mean, you're talking about growing, but every time I get back on here, man, your intro video is better and better. So I don't know who's growing really here.
Bro, hey, when I'm the director of something like you are recruiting, then you can talk to me, okay? When I'm the director of YouTube.
Okay, okay. Well, you're pretty good. You're a pretty good director of YouTube right now, though, man. So I appreciate you for having me on, though, for real.
And always a pleasure having you on, man. And even after the draft, you know we got to have you and Dante back on to evaluate how everyone went down. But bro, it's your time of the year right now. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. We're getting close to Christmas Eve here. How you feeling? It must be ramped up. Like you just mine must. I know you were just at the blue gold game too, right?
Yeah.
So you're all over the place. You're dealing with the next generation of recruits. You're dealing with the recruits coming out. You got it all covered. How? And I'm sure you're already on to your 2024 board. How's everything going?
It's good, man. It's good. I'm deep in the consulting side of the NFL draft business now too. So I mean, I'm watching 2024s, 2025s. I'm watching a little bit of everybody, but it's I mean, it's a great time of the year. Like you said, it's a little busy, obviously, with the draft. And I was just in Notre Dame, obviously, for the blue gold game, traveling a little bit. And my second child is on the way in 6 weeks. So it's busy, man. It's busy, but it's the best time of the year, man. I love this week. It's always fun because the work's all done. You have to just kind of sit back and just see how things unfold. You know, watch everyone just panic when rumors get thrown out there, even though you should only believe about 17% of what you hear this time of year, but like everyone's going to freak out. So it's always fun, man.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw it, but Dalvin Cook's agent was he was on that podcast a couple weeks ago, and he was starting the rumblings of Dalvin Cook to Miami. He's keeping them going. But one thing he said was the media is always off when it comes to draft stuff, but when it comes to the trade stuff and stuff, they're usually like dead on. You know what I mean? But he's like, the draft, they get to like, look at us, for example. We've gone from, you know, I've been ahead of the curve. I will say I've been ahead of the curve. You know, before anyone was reporting in mainstream media, I was talking about Matthew Bergeron and us looking at tackles potentially at 51. Then I did the same thing with defensive tackle, Mazi Smith, Keanu Benton, all those guys. I don't think they'll be there about 50. But anyways, you know, I know we were taking interior. Anyways, you see where I'm going here? Like, even I'm getting fed something different everywhere. And now the rumors are we're going to trade up in the first for Jahmyr Gibbs. And
that's what I hear, yeah.
Do you come on? Let's start off with that. Do you really believe that? Because first of all, knowing our GM's track record and the devaluation of running backs, I know we tried to move up for Najee but we basically laughed at what was being asked for by the Vikings. What do you even think we move up for Jahmyr Gibbs? Because one of our beat reporters just came out and said there's a guy we like, and he's my man crush at the position. Devon Achane. We've spent quote unquote a considerable amount of time with him the last few weeks, and you know we already got a track team in Miami, and he fits that bill. What are your thoughts? Do you even see us potentially trading up for a running back, let alone, you know, give us your thoughts on Jahmyr Gibbs while you're at it.
I mean, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's one of the best space players at the running back position to come out in a few years. Like, I really do. I mean, the kid is dynamite, 4.36 at his 200-pound frame. I mean, he makes people miss in a phone booth, incredible short area quickness, catches the ball extremely well. He's not he's not your de facto workhorse runner on early downs, right? Like, I don't think he's ever going to have 250 plus carries in his season, but you don't really need him to, right? Like, he's going to carry the ball 200 times. He's going to catch another 70, 80 balls. Like, that's what I think the best of Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be, but he's dynamic. I really do love him a lot. I don't think Miami is going to trade up high enough to try to get a kid like that. Like, I just don't see that, right? Like, jumping from 51. What's that?
Where do you see him going? Because you said high enough then. So
I think he has a chance to go late in the first round. I think somewhere, I don't even know who picks 25, but like 25 to 32, somewhere in that ballpark is possible. I mean, if he sneaks into the early second round, I wouldn't be shocked about it, but I really think that with how the NFL values those players that can really kill in space the way Jahmyr Gibbs can do, I really think that they are going to value him tremendously. But I mean, back to your question though, like, I don't think Miami needs to do that. Like, they are a system, and we've seen what Mike McDaniel's done, obviously, with his Kyle Shanahan roots and all that great stuff. Like, they never have valued the running back position that high. I mean, they're taking guys in the third round or later. I mean, you think about some of the track record that they've had of finding guys like the Tevin Colemans of the world and the Elijah Mitchells and those types of backs, right? Like, they're not high draft capital type of backs. So I think, you have Raheem Mostert coming back. You have Jeff Wilson on the roster. Miami can mix and match those running backs, so you can be very successful. I mean, they ran the ball well last year for what they had, right? So I think that you just find the committee approach. Maybe you spend mid or late round draft capital on a running back. I think you're good to go. Like, I don't think that it's necessary in that system to really mortgage that much draft capital to get up and get a running back. I just really don't.
I agree. Spoiler for my 3-round mock coming out yesterday. The team I was really mulling over was the Bills. Now, I ended up going another way because they got James Cook. Maybe they want to see it. But that was the team where it's like, we know they've been in on Derrick Henry, and then they pivoted to Damian Harris to a short-term contract. And I was like, that makes sense. And they keep throwing it at the darts at the wall, trying to hit running back, just like they've been trying to hit the edges over the past couple of years, right? And actually, another spoiler, where I actually ended up having them going? McVay.
McVay? Man, because they need it.
They draft a running back every year, right?
They do. And, the starting running back, Cam Akers, gets banged up all the time, right? So, I mean, he's not a very dependable player. Aside from that, you have guys like, Darrell Henderson, who was on the roster, but like, he's not a part of the full-time plan, obviously, moving forward. Kyron Williams was a guy they picked in the 5th round, but like, that's not a lead ball carrier. He's a good running back, but he's not a lead ball carrier, in my opinion. So, I mean, LA makes some sense, man. They're such a weird team to draft because, I mean, I think we need to remember that they drafted Tutu Atwell in the 2nd round. So, like, that stuff happens, man. It's wild. So, you never know, man.
I was convinced that man was not going in front of the 4th, I was like convinced Tutu was not because of his size. And then here come the Rams and McVay.
The worst interview I've ever done in draft history, because I do a lot of interviews obviously with draft prospects. Tutu Atwell is number 1, sir. I left that interview and I was like, that kid is not going to be very good in the NFL. And so far I'm okay right now. So
really,
yeah,
we're
man.
Are we talking about like a doorknob type thing here? Like,
it was the only interview I've ever done in the last probably 5 years where we didn't put it out because it was just like 8 minutes. I somehow stretched this thing to 8 minutes long, and I probably asked 20 questions. I'll put it like that, right? Like, it was that bad. It was.
You know what? See, this is why I'm reacting to this. People, I got to explain my reaction because you got to understand. Ryan comes from like an evaluator, a scouting standpoint. So I'm sure you're coming from the interview standpoint of like, how would a team come away from the interview?
It's 100%. Yeah.
And
because in like the field that I'm in, right? Like, I don't scout for a team. So getting that information is tough sometimes. So that's why I do interviews. I mean, I'll be fully forthcoming on that. I interview guys because sometimes the evaluation of the person and from the mental acumen and that type of area, I don't get full access to that stuff all the time. Right. So like, I want to talk to a guy firsthand because that'll tell me how do they click, how good are they on the whiteboard, football mind, like that type of stuff. And when a guy bombs an interview, man, like, again, I take note of it, man, because I think that stuff is a precursor for not great sometimes, So, yeah.
See, I also like how you take that in your evaluation because, like, when I do my big boards and stuff, I tell people I don't factor in character because I don't have access. I don't know these kids. I don't have access to what NFL teams. So mine is just purely what I see on tape. I don't know these guys from Tom, Dick, and Harry. I can't. I'm ignorant to that. I can't come out here and make a judgment call. That speaking of that. Yes. Jalen Carter.
Yes.
Man, brother, I haven't seen a kid this. Nadamik and Sue, stand back, okay? Like, I'm sorry, this kid. And I know, someone said in my comments that maybe you can confirm that because I didn't see this, that he canceled all visits outside of top 10 teams. And
it's
what
possible.
are your?
I didn't see that though.
What are your thoughts? Do you see him getting past? I know the Seahawks are rumored at quarterback. I got a 2-pronged question because everyone should know Ryan's father is a Dolphin fan, so Ryan's in tune with the Dolphins. Let me ask you this 2-pronged question. Is he going to make it out of the top 10? And number 2, if you were the GM and Christian Wilkins wanted $20+ million per year, would you trade him for a first-round pick if it led to a path of Darnell Wright, or specifically in this question, Jalen Carter? Because I think Jalen Carter in year 1 might be just as good as what we saw Christian Wilkins last year. My take, though.
It's a great question. I would say, from the Jalen Carter thing for a second, I think there's about a 0.00001% chance he gets out of the top 10. Like, I just don't see it, man. I see the value of him, and because it's quiet right now, right? It's quiet. And that tells you that things have kind of settled up a little bit. I know it's stupid. Like, it's 2 misdemeanors. Like, we should be taking this a lot more seriously, but it was 2 misdemeanors. And I think NFL teams are just going to kind of skate past it a little bit. I think they're also going to chalk up the pro day exhaustion thing to just him being mentally taxed, which I think has some validity, but like not fully, right? Like, that's a very nuanced conversation that we can have. But personally, I think Seattle's a team in the top 10 that makes a lot of sense. I think the Raiders make a lot of sense at 7. I think the Falcons can make some sense at 8. I don't think he gets past 10, though, with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles, with the infrastructure they have in place, with a good GM, good coaching staff, it seems, just coming off a Super Bowl run, they could be a team, especially with Fletcher Cox coming back on a 1-year deal, where you say, come in here, man, learn from Fletcher, learn from the guys in the room, and then you're our guy. I mean, you're going to play a lot because you're really, really good, right? But you're still going to learn from some of the old cats, the Brandon Grahams of the world, like that, those types of dudes. And I think that's would be a really good situation for him. So I don't think he gets out of the top 10. I think teams are just going to kind of look past it a little bit. Would I mortgage Christian Wilkins for a first-round pick to get Jalen Carter in a vacuum? Sure. Yeah, I mean, because I look at it like, who do I think is a better football player long-term? I mean, I think it's Jalen Carter if he gets head on, right? Like, he's that special of a football player. Christian Wilkins is really good, though, man.
He is really good. But Jalen Carter's generational, potentially. Yes. That's listen, I love Christian Wilkins, but Christian Wilkins is never going to buddy, Jalen Carter's first step, he's already in the backfield. Like, pocket, it's already blown up. He's a first step, he's in the backfield. Like,
he's a great player, man.
Wilkins best
player. Jalen Carter's the best player in this class, in my opinion. If we take all the off the field stuff off and those question marks, I think he is. I do. So in a vacuum, yes. It's just so tough because I also know that Christian Wilkins is a great leader for the Dolphins too, right? He's a great locker room guy. He brings a lot more than just what you see on Sundays, but it would be tempting. I would definitely think about it because 20+ is a lot for a guy. I know he's had some backfield production, like especially tackle for loss production, but he's not really the greatest pass rusher of all time, right? Like he's a premier run defender and he's a great leader, but it's a passing league nowadays, right? So that's a conversation that we would have, but I think I would ultimately stick with Wilkins just because he's the proven product and he's nothing off the field. Like, you know, he's going to be squeaky clean day in and day out, and he's a leader of the Dolphins, obviously.
Yeah, the other just factors to me are like you got Zach Seiler in the building who gives you similar production, right? He gives you similar production and then more from a pass rush standpoint on less snaps. And then the other factor to me is, you know, listen, Aaron Donald's the only defensive tackle I wouldn't replace for Jalen Carter. Like it's nothing against Christian Wilkins. I'd replace Jeffrey Simmons with them instead of paying him 22, 23 million. You damn right I'd go Jalen Carter. The only guy I would not replace with him is Aaron Donald. That's how much I believe in this kid. If he keeps this on straight, I think that guy's, listen, I don't say this a ton, especially kids coming out, but if that guy keeps this on,
stud, man.
Canton at the end of his line. I'm telling you, man, that guy's generational, bro.
You want to hear my comp for him? This is very flattering to him. Compare him to Warren Sapp. A lot of Warren Sapp in that game, in my opinion. A lot of Warren Sapp. Like, because he's got kind of that stubby-ish looking build a little bit, like that was one thing about Warren is like Warren did not look like he would be nearly as cat quick as he was. Yeah. Bro. But then he would just kind of like just tear you to pieces, man. And that's kind of the same vibes I get with Jalen is that like he is just explosive, quick. Again, man, you don't have to sub you on the player. It's just
I know the character. I know, and I agree. You're right. And everything you said about Wilkins being clean. Listen, I'll tell you right now. If you were to say to me, we feel Wilkins is a better investment based on how squeaky clean he is to the other player, you will not hear a peep from me because you're 110% right. Like I'm not going to argue that.
All Wilkins does, man. All he does is go up to Connecticut and drink hot cocoa. Like that's all. That's all Christian Wilkins.
And I love Christian Wilkins though. So I mean, like. So it is what it is, though. I'm just also, I understand the financial aspect and the business side of this. And I will throw this too out because I know you study these facts.
Yes.
Dolphin fans really need to go back and look. Historically, defensive tackles do not get paid handsomely in Fangio's system. The money is spent on edge rushers, second level guys, and the secondary. That's where the money is usually spread around, right?
That's fair.
So, hey, we'll see. Listen, we're in win now mode. He's a big piece. If they sign him, I'm not going to cry. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, let's shift though. A big rumor that, and a lot of names, and I wanted to go over some of the names. Let's start off. Let's segue here actually before we get to offense. Defensive tackle. There is word that we are looking at the defensive tackle class. All right, because not only let's take Christian Wilkins out of the even if you extend him. Raekwon Davis hasn't technically pretty much earned a pay raise in the second contract yet. If you extend Christian Wilkins, you're not going to be able to afford Zach Seiler on his new deal. He's going to price himself out. The interest is heavy there. Now, listen, my man crush list is going to come out tomorrow morning. Man, I listen, you can't pick Jalen Carter, right? Obviously, or I would. Yes. I love Keanu Benton as well. I'm a huge Keanu Benton fan. What are your thoughts? Now, I think if Mazzy improves, I think Mazzy has a very high ceiling if he improves as a pass rusher. I think I'm higher than most on Ika too. I had him as my 5th overall. What are your overall thoughts on that defensive tackle class and guys you could see that do you think my top 4 are Breesy, Jalen, and then Mazzy, and then Keanu. Do you think any of those guys will even be there at 51?
It's possible. I mean, Mazzy. I mean, I don't think the first 2 guys are going to be there. Obviously, like we talked about Jalen Carter, Brian Breesy he's a very interesting player because I feel like the media might be slightly higher on him, including myself, than maybe some of the NFL, just because of some of the durability concerns. Like obviously he's had a couple injuries in his career. And he didn't really ever hit his ceiling, right? Like his ceiling is stupid though. He's such a talented football player. I'm still all bought into that kid. I would still take him top 15 if the medical's checked out, but I think that there's going to be some hesitation. So I think he's probably more of the mid to late first round conversation than maybe what we once thought he could be, but he's still a tremendous player. So he won't be there at 51, obviously. Mazi Smith probably won't be either, because I think that the NFL is also higher on Mazi than maybe some media are. But I think Keanu Benton's a guy that's interesting. Like I personally, if you ask me to bet today if he's there or not, I would say he's probably off the board just because he's clean as anything, man. Yeah. I mean, he is 6'4", right around, a hair under, 34-inch arms, 300+ pounds, easy weights. Good athlete, man. Like you see what he did at the combine, it shouldn't have surprised anybody because he's explosive on film. He's incredibly strong. I think Wisconsin misused him a lot recently. I really do, man. Like he is a guy that I think could play between 1, 3. I think he could play to 4, 4i at times. I think he can do a little bit of everything as far as a movable chess piece. Yep. But Jim Leonard and Wisconsin's defense was really good. So like, I don't doubt him for blame him for doing this, but he's more than just a nose tackle to me. Like he is an interchangeable interior defensive lineman that has a lot more burst and a lot more wiggle than you would initially anticipate because you just have this assumption he's a 6'4", 310+ pound nose tackle. Like that's kind of the image you get in your minds. I disagree. Former wrestler, high school kid, was a really good wrestler, has played along that defensive line, mostly at nose, but he has the versatility, I think, to be a really good movable chess piece up front. He's not going to exclusively play 3-tech, but he can really be that guy that whether you're strong side, weak side, if the offense shifts or there's a motion, instead of, having to flip guys, you can just literally just flip alignments and be that type of dude. So I love Keanu Benton. I had him on the podcast. He's a funny dude, man. Talk about a fun locker room personality. This dude, I mean, he showed up to the interview and he had his core rows in and the one just kept sticking up and he's like, man, I just can't get this thing down today. He starts hitting his head. I'm like, what is happening right now, man? But he's hysterical, man. He's hysterical. If he's ever 51, that's one of those where, like, if you're dead set on taking an interior defensive lineman at 51, run that up to the podium, man. I think he's a really, really good football player. If I was the Dolphins, I would be ecstatic if a guy like that was there.
That's so would I. Oh, man, now, especially now that you tell about what he add to the locker room, that makes him even more appealing. You know what I mean?
He's a funny dude, man. Funny dude, yeah.
And I think he has a pretty decently high ceiling.
Yes.
I don't know, man. He's pretty explosive off that, that short area of quickness, man. Guy in a booth, he's good, man. Linebacker. Now, when everyone had Trenton Simpson as one, I kept saying Jack Campbell's that dude. Jack Campbell's a dude. Then Jack Campbell tested. Now everyone's on the Jack Campbell bandwagon. Listen, absolutely in love with the guy. I also know the history of the Buckus Award and how that translates to the NFL level. And, guys are usually, it translates pretty well. What are your thoughts on, I don't think he's going to be there 51. I don't think there's a chance, but there's another name that's interesting to me. He actually ended up being my linebacker 2. And think about it from Fangio's standpoint for a sec.
Yep.
Drew Sanders.
Okay.
Fangio loves to disguise what he's doing pre-snap, right? Even as much as he can post-snap until he has to show it, he will, right? You look at a guy like Drew Sanders with what Arkansas did with him on the line of scrimmage and at edge, and then you look at what they did with him last year in more of a Mike role and more of a linebacker role, interior linebacker role. He kind of feels like that those two words you use, that chess piece. He kind of feels like that front seven chess piece that you could really play with if you're Fangio. I also love Henley. I think Henley's.
I love Dion Henley. I love Dion Henley. Yeah.
Oh. He's my man crush, actually, because you can't pick Campbell because he's number 1. So, what are your thoughts of the linebacker class?
Sure.
Who do you see there at 51? Because I think there's going to be a run, and I think, I don't know if those top 3 guys. I think any of those 3 guys are going to be there.
No, they're not. I think that all of Jack Campbell, Trenton Simpson, and Drew Sanders will probably all be gone. I think you mentioned it, right? I think that for me, for different layers, Trenton Simpson is still a work in progress as a true inside linebacker. I mean, he was kind of in that Isaiah Simmons role as a sophomore in 2021. They moved him to more of a traditional weak inside linebacker position as a junior. And I feel like he had some good moments, but I just don't think he processes incredibly quickly right now just because it's still new to him, right? Like he hasn't seen that position enough. So I think year 2, year 3, year 4 are going to be much better than what year 1's going to be from Trenton Simpson. I don't think year 1's going to be fantastic, but I think if you stick with a guy like a Trenton Simpson, you get the best out of him in the right system, I think he could be a star. I really do. But it's about the right system and being patient with him because I don't think he's a year 1 slam dunk Pro Bowl level player. I don't see that. Jack Campbell's the complete opposite. Jack Campbell is, and he's a much better athlete than people thought and people gave him credit for. He had a lot of parallels to Leighton Vander Esch from a size, athleticism perspective when he was coming out of Boise State. The thing about Jack, though, Jack sees the game at a great level, man. He's incredibly smart. Don't love the pad level all the time, and I still think he needs to continue to fill out that frame because I think there's natural power, but I still think that there's more power profile that he can tap into. But he is incredibly instinctive with a good range on the inside. He's about as easy as an eval in this class. He is just going to be at worst, he's a good starting Mike in the NFL. At worst, he's going to be a good football player, in my opinion. Drew Sanders is a tough evaluation, man. I actually would prefer him for the Dolphins a lot more if Brian Flores still had his imprint of the defense, to be honest, man. He is that New England Patriots style linebacker to me. He's that guy that's going to play on ball, how Miami and New England and everybody else has kind of used Kyle Van Noy. He's a little bit of a bigger, better version athletically of a Kyle Van Noy, but he's really on the line of scrimmage, playing a little bit inside. But I really like him as that movable chess piece, to your point. Like, I think that he brings a lot of qualities to that spot that make a lot of sense. But again, he's not going to be there at 51 just because he's long, he's explosive, he's talented. Like, all those things together, someone's going to draft him pretty high, in my opinion. I think he's going to be a top 40 selection when all is said and done. 51, then you're getting into the Diane Henley, Noah Sewell type of range of linebackers. I love Diane Henley. I love him.
So do I.
51's a little too high for me, just slightly, because he's a 6-year senior. He's a little bit of an older cat. But, man, I think he sees the game at a pretty nice level. He is incredibly explosive, and he is physical. And those things, those translate, man. He's going to be a really good linebacker at the next level. The only question I have is, like, the long window of a Diane Henley, because he is going to be a little bit of an older prospect. But former Nevada transfer, really took advantage of his 1 year at Washington State. He's a really good, explosive athlete that I think also is pretty loose in pass coverage, man. He can play some man coverage. I like Diane Henley a lot. 51 might be a little bit high, but if Miami trades back a few spots, maybe that conversation could be a good one for you.
I'm lower on Sewell than most, and you remember how high I was on his brother. You remember I would gushing over his brother. Two guys I might be higher on than most that the Dolphins have had some ties to.
Yep.
Owen Popo from Auburn and DeMarvion Overshone from Texas. Yep. Your thoughts on those two players?
Yeah, Popo is one of the most explosive linebackers you're ever going to see. I mean, he ran in the 4.3s. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's right around 6 foot, 225, 230 pounds. But coming downhill, man, kid's a heat-seeking missile. Like, when he sees it and he trusts it, he can obliterate dudes. Like, he comes to balance as a tackler. He brings his pads behind him. The problem I have with him is I think he gets fooled a little bit with eye candy at times. I think he's a little bit of a inconsistent processor from just kind of seeing things in front of him. When he guesses right, though, and he picks it right, he's really explosive. But I also think that sometimes he's a little too aggressive downhill, where he'll post trigger, he'll get down, play action, you're completely out of position. And the bad part is that he's not the longest guy in the world, neither tall or long. So when he's slow recovering or get to back in pass coverage, he just doesn't have the length to kind of close passing windows incredibly fast. But, man, the tools are excellent. Like, he is – I mean, you can't teach the kid running 4.3 and being the type of athlete he is. Like, those guys are pretty rare. DeMarvion Overshone is a really intriguing player because he was a former safety, obviously, like almost a 5-star level safety coming out of high school. And obviously he transitioned to the inside linebacker spot. At first, he was playing a little bit of that like overhang Sam linebacker type role. But then obviously the last couple of years, he's been playing inside as an inside linebacker. I didn't like the 2021 film at all. Like, I was very hesitant on him. 2022 I actually thought was quietly a lot better. And people stopped talking about him because it's just like he's the 5th-year senior now. No one wants to talk about him as much. But he is 6'3", 230, decent length, good athlete. Another kid, I think he doesn't see the game consistently all the time, but I mean, he got a lot better as a senior. And I think he's got that length potential where if he's a Sam linebacker, maybe on some obvious passing situations, you can lock him up against tight ends. And I think that he has some will upside. So I think there's a starter in there. You have to be a little bit patient with him, but I think Overshone is you really get him acclimated to a system and get him to see the game a little bit faster. I mean, you can't teach 6'3", 230 with the athleticism he has as a former safety.
All right, let's switch gears because I know everyone in the chat's been waiting for me to talk about this position because it's the one that we're like heavily tied to, tight end, ever since the Mike Gesicki departure. Let's start off. There's 2 names I really want to talk to you about, but also I want to talk to you about the rest of the class. But there's actually 3 names I really want to talk to you about.
Okay.
Let's start off. Darnell Washington. Your thoughts on him? I think some people are really unfair with him in terms of the whole, you know what it kind of reminds me of? Remember when people were hating on Jonathan Taylor not being a good enough pass catcher, and it's just like, okay, you didn't give him the opportunity. What, you know what I mean? It kind of reminds me of that because when he did get the opportunity, the guy made the most of it. And let's be honest, Brock Bowers is arguably one of the, best up and coming tight end prospects that everyone's going to be gushing over. You know what I mean? So like, I get it, but he managed to have his best pass catching season, even with Bowers having the season he had. So what are your overall thoughts on Darnell Washington? The guy is just, a freak, right? What are your thoughts?
He is a freak show, man. I mean, he's 6'6.5". He's 260 plus pounds. He ran 4.65 at the combine, I believe, if I remember correctly. I mean, he's a very impressive athlete, which is why he was a former 5-star recruit. I mean, some people had him as just an athlete. So like people thought maybe he could play defense, maybe he could play offense. Obviously he settles in at tight end. Great blocker, man. One of the best blocking tight ends you'll ever evaluate. I mean, he is basically an extra offensive tackle on the field. He really is. I mean, I don't say that lightly. Like, he displaces gaps with the power he has. He runs his feet on contact. He has good movement skills to work to the second level and combos. A lot to like about a guy like a Darnell Washington. I'm just calling him Darnell right. Darnell Washington is about as easy as an eval as a inline blocker as you'll ever see. If someone can't watch him and be like, yeah, that guy's going to be a really good blocker, then you probably shouldn't evaluate players. Like, that's just kind of where you are. There is a question, though, to your point. I mean, 40-something career catches, 700 career yards in 3 seasons. He had his best year this year, so we showed a lot of movement forward. I think that there are some limitations as far as what his upside is as a pass receiver, just in the simple sense that, and I know he ran a great 3-cone and a great short shuttle, but I don't think he's the most flexible athlete of all time.
You think he's more of a lumbering runner and stiffer athlete, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a Mercedes Lewis, Bubba Franks type of tight end, right? Where it's like, you can win with length. You can win with straight line speed in Darnell Washington's case, but I just don't think he's ever going to be a consistent route runner. So I just struggle with him being a high volume pass receiver. He's probably more of a 40, 50 catch type of comparison compared to a guy that maybe could get 70 plus in a good season, but he's still going to be a really good football player, man. It's just the simple fact of he might be better served in a tight end duo where there's a really good pass receiver that's a part of that duo, so that you can play a lot of 12 personnel and do that type of situation. But he's going to be a really good player. So I kind of hate the hate on him. I actually have done like a complete, like, almost 180 on him, man. Like, I didn't love him at first because I felt like he was getting overhyped, right? And then I really was like, no, but like, I really like him for the baseline and what he is as a player. And then people are starting to go backwards now on it. They're like, 4 tight ends might go in front of him and that type of conversation. He's my tight end too in this class. I think he's still a second-round player, but I still think he's a really good player at what he does.
And the ceiling is ridiculous on him.
Yes.
Like, so here's my thing. Like, to your point of 40, 50 catches.
Yeah.
I think, 6 to 8 of those could be touchdowns in the red zone. That's where I think, like, this guy could make his bread and butter in line and in the red zone. That makes a ton of sense. Because, you would see so many times, not so many times, but last year when they target him over the middle of the field, he's just bigger than everyone, bro. And he's just like going up. And I was like, unbelievable. Okay. So I have Darnell as my tight end 1 because of his ceiling.
Ooh, okay.
My tight end 2, who I think is the safest pick at the position, is Michael Mayer.
Yeah,
reminds me a lot of Andrew Thomas in comparison wise, in the terms of, in that draft class, Andrew Thomas seemed like the safest tackle and one of the safest picks in the class coming out. Michael Mayer seems like that to me. And how you just talked about, you talked about Darnell, I've fallen more in love with Michael Mayer because of the overanalyzation and the hate this guy's getting. Because listen, okay, so he isn't the most explosive after the catch. Everything other than that, and first of all, I've seen him make some great plays after the catch, but everything after that, he's pretty much polished on. So I don't get the hate on Michael Mayer. What are your thoughts on Michael Mayer? Because if he was there at 51, that's another one. You got to, buddy, there'd be smoke behind me running to the podium. All right.
Yeah, if he somehow got to 51, you're absolutely correct. I don't think there's any chance that happens, but it would be definitely a podium run. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
For me, there's a thing called analysis paralysis, which is the overanalyzation you're talking about, right? Michael Mayer's been this guy since he was a true freshman at Notre Dame. I mean, he came in and immediately took Tommy Tremble's starting job, who went in the 3rd round to the Carolina Panthers that year in the draft. And he was a 400, 500 receiving yard guy as a true freshman and was a freshman All-American. So for 3 years now, we've known who Michael Mayer is. Like, that guy, I mean, he looks like Clark Kent. Like, that's who he is, right? But I think we're really missing that the floor matters on these prospects, man. Like, we get so infatuated with the ceiling that we lose sight that there's almost no possibility that Michael Mayer isn't a good tight end in the NFL. Like, almost none. Now, yes, is he the sexiest athlete of all time? No, he's not. He's not going to run 4.5 in the 40, but he ran 4.7 flat at the combine, and people are like, oh my God, he's a bad athlete. I'm like, 4.7 flat is the same thing that TJ Hawkinson just ran a few years ago. It's the same thing that Mark Andrews just ran. Mark Andrews ran 4.67 coming out. Jason Witten was in the similar ballpark. Dallas Goedert would have ran the same 40, and he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL now. I mean, honestly, and I'm not trying to cut a wound here, but I feel like some people are trying to make this like, do you remember when Mike Gesicki was drafted by the Miami Dolphins recently?
Yeah.
Do you remember there were 2 tight ends that went right after him? Do you know who the 2 tight ends were?
No, I don't remember actually.
Dallas Goedert was the second tight end.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now I remember because I know how many Dolphin fans wanted Dallas Goedert. Okay. Yes. So I can't believe I forgot that one. Yes.
Dallas Goedert was a second round pick that year. And then the next tight end off the board was 3rd round pick, Mark Andrews. So I feel like we're getting into that territory where we're propping up some of these great athletes and forgetting about that, like, not everybody wins in the same way. There's different ways to win a football game. And it was so funny. I had someone comment on Twitter. It was like trying to downplay Michael Mayer. It was like, he's just too much like Jason Witten to me. I'm like, the guy that caught 1,200 passes and is going to go in the Hall of Fame, that guy, like that guy, man. Yes, he's never going to average 15 yards per catch in the NFL. He's probably going to average more 11, 12, 12 and a half, somewhere in that ballpark. But he's going to be a good blocker. He's going to be super physical. And he's just the most competitive dude on the field at all times, man. Like, that's all. And that's some of the intangible stuff that you can't measure all the time. Like, I don't need to measure his height or his arm length in this situation because, like, when you really talk to him and get to know him, he's so competitive, man. Like, he's a dog. Like, he really is. So I think that at least he's a good player, but I think he's going to be a great player in my opinion. I really do, because I just think that there's something wired in him that will not let him be good. He'll always strive to be great. So I think we lose sight of the floor sometimes, man. But I just really think Michael Mayer is a top 10 player in this class, regardless of positional value. Like, he's not going to go top 10 because he's a tight end and he doesn't have the sexiest game of all time. But he's just such a good player, man. Like, I just think we're losing sight of a really good football player here.
Yeah, I agree. My number 3 guy, Sam LaPorta.
Oh, spicy.
Man crush. I am a huge Sam LaPorta guy here. Now, here's my issue, and this is where he's frustrated. Man, I'm getting real frustrated with his tight end class. My issue with this and the Dolphin fans, and let's mix in both guys.
Yeah.
Kincaid's my 4th guy.
Okay.
The reason why Kincaid's my 4th guy is he's more of a big slot or a boundary guy than like, I ain't putting him in line. It's Gesicki all over again. Here's my thing where I'm getting frustrated with people, and maybe you can hammer this home. Dolphin fans look at a guy like Sam LaPorta, and there are Dolphin fans who are saying, oh, he's Gesicki. And I'm trying to tell these people, no, he's strong and he's willing. His technique is just absolute trash at times. His hand placement's all over the place. He needs to be coached up technique-wise. And I'm trying to explain to people, Ryan, especially with tight end, when you're looking at blocking, you got to look at just two. Obviously, it's deeper than this, but the face value. You either are willing and have the power, but you need to be coached up technique-wise, or there's guys who aren't willing because they shy away from the physicality, and they just, even if they are strong enough, they just don't like that physicality part. That's what Gesicki was. That's what Kincaid reminds me of. What are your thoughts on Sam LaPorta? Because now I'm not going to be my co-partner, Neil, his comp for him is Mark Andrews and Owen Daniels. Mixed together, and a lot of people, I know it. A lot of people in this community are you're getting a lot of Kittle vibes, and I think they're just trying to tie him to McDaniel, and Iowa produces them. What are your thoughts on Sam LaPorta? Because I think Zach Kuntz, Darnell Washington, and Sam LaPorta have the highest ceiling in this draft class of the tight ends. What are your thoughts on Sam LaPorta?
You know what's funny about this tight end class is I actually comped someone to Mike Gesicki, and that was actually Luke Musgrave. He's the most Mike Gesicki guy I think of all time, man. I heard he's
deal. between all of us, I heard privately he's a PUSSY when it comes to the physical aspect of the game. I heard it like if he breaks a fingernail, he's missing the game. Like that's what I heard.
Oh man, I've heard a lot of things about Luke Musgrave. We'll talk off air on some of that stuff though. I'll say this, man. I'm not the biggest Dalton Kincaid fan of all time. I'm not. I've been very forthcoming about this because of a lot of the same things you said. He's never going to be an inline guy. Just not going to be. And for a guy that is talked about as this great athlete, I don't really see him create a lot of separation either. I really don't. I think he's a good athlete. Like he's a good athlete, flexibility wise. I think straight line's fine. Like he's good. He's a good athlete in that regard. But I'm just not the biggest Kincaid fan of all time. LaPorta is a really interesting player, especially in the Miami Dolphins system. In that system, you know, that has been adopted a million times now from the Shanahan tree. Like that is really interesting because what are the things that you're going to ask Sam LaPorta, or you're going to ask the tight end that system to do? You're going to ask him to block. LaPorta can. I agree that there's technical aspects that need to be improved. But the other big thing that they value so heavily is the ability to win after the catch, right? Like every player is the ability to win after the catch. Sam LaPorta is probably the best tight end in this class after the catch. He probably is. He breaks tackles. He's pretty flexible in space. Ran 4.59 at the combine. He's a good athlete overall, right? So I think he's another guy. We see tight end from Iowa, and there's assumptions that are made at times. It happens, right? But I think the other part is that he was a part of a historically awful Iowa offense this year. It was one of the worst ever. I mean, if I never have to see Spencer Petras throw a football again, I would be very happy. Like, it's just not good, man. But the what McDaniel, McVay, Shanahan, all those guys, what they want in a tight end is what Sam LaPorta brings to the table. I really do think that he would fit really well because that's the part that we miss with the evaluation sometimes is that fit matters so much. And in that fit, I would love it. If I put Sam LaPorta in a Pittsburgh Steelers style offense, I probably wouldn't like him as much. But to a Shanahan-esque offense that McDaniel is going to run, I think that there's a lot of merit to him being a starter eventually on the NFL level.
Two other names before we move off of tight end here that have been tied that they like. More so fitting in 84 because I don't think we have. Well, I'll give you three names because I want to hear your opinion on one of them. We don't have a fourth or fifth. We don't pick till the sixth and seventh after 84. Two names that have been tied to them: Tucker Kraft and Brenton Strange from Penn State, and a guy that I'm high on, and I mentioned Zach Kuntz. Sorry, what are your thoughts on him too?
I love Tucker Kraft. He's one of my favorite players in this class, man. He is. If you miss out on Michael Mayer in the first round, this is the day two version of Michael Mayer, in my opinion. Okay. He's not ever going to be quite as good as Michael Mayer, but all the things that you love about Mayer's game, he brings to the field as well. He's incredibly physical, powerful kid, has upside as a blocker, strong, plucks the football through traffic. A lot of the things that you love about Mayer are very much there with a guy like a Tucker Kraft. So I like Tucker Kraft a lot in that role, especially. Really good football player. Zach Kuntz, man, he was the number. People don't know this. Well, maybe some people do, but I don't want to assume that I know more than people. That's weird. Number one. So everyone knows Pat Freiermuth, that is now a starting tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Good football player. The year Pat Freiermuth came out of high school and signed with Penn State, he was the second ranked tight end for Penn State that year. Number one was Zach Kuntz, who obviously ended up at Old Dominion. Had some injuries. Got kind of lost along the way because then Pat Freiermuth became the guy. But, I mean, historically, we're talking about a rare athlete, man. I mean, he's nearly 6'8". He is over 250 pounds. He ran 4.55. He's explosive. God. It's all there. Another guy, I'm not going to ask him to block too often, right? But he is incredibly explosive in a straight line. And the thing about him, too, reason is he didn't play a ton this year because he got banged up, right? He's really only a one-year starter at the college level. I still think there's a lot that you can develop in his game. It's not like this is a guy that's played for 4 years and you're trying to convince me that his upside is still immense, right? This is a guy that hasn't played a ton of football, hasn't started a ton of football on the college level. So if Zach Kuntz gets into the right system and is able to stay healthy, he's got a chance to be really, really good down the line. He really, really does. And then Brenton Strange, to your last, final part of the question, he's Sam LaPorta-ish. He brings a lot of the same, he's not quite the athlete that LaPorta is, but he is a little bit of a shorter tight end, 6'3.5", 245, 250 pounds. He'll work in the run game, though. He does a pretty good job there, but he's an after-catch guy. He breaks some tackles, has a little bit of juice. So, again, back to that McDaniel system, to the wide zone, working off of play action, do all that type of stuff, West Coast-ish. That is where Brenton Strange would fit. So, I'm not as big on him comparative to a couple of the guys that you asked me about, but I think that he really fits the mold of why you would really like Sam LaPorta to Miami, for instance.
All right, let's move on here to offensive tackle.
Yeah.
Everyone knows my biggest man crush. I don't care about who's the best in this class. It's Darnell Wright. He's my tackle one. I love Darnell Wright.
Yeah.
Him and that Brian Breesy film was pretty fun to watch, I must say.
It was.
What are your thoughts on the tackle class here? I know some, just to give you some names they've been tied to. They've been tied to, I know they really like Matthew Bergeron.
Yes.
I know when they're at Alabama, they were looking at Latu, the tight end. They were looking at Gibbs, but I know they were looking at Tyler Steen, a guy who can play both tackle positions and potentially guard.
Yep.
Your thoughts on some of those, and your thoughts. Let's start off with that, because I got two other guys I want to talk about: Matthew Bergeron, and Tyler Steen. Your thoughts on those before I ask you about a couple other players here.
I'm not the biggest fan of Steen. I think that Steen, for me, is a guy that can play a couple different positions, but I really think he's more of a swing player, man. Like I didn't necessarily see starter when I watched his Alabama film. I think that he's got pretty good foot quickness. Length is a little bit of an issue, and I just think that his hand nuance is something that really needs to get a lot better. But as a guy, if you're bringing him in to be a guy that can potentially play right tackle, back up inside a guard, do a bunch of little things, I do like him for that role. I think I'm a little bit lower than some people, especially in the media, are nowadays on Tyler Steen. But the NFL likes Tyler Steen, so he's probably going to go higher than where I would project him personally. I really, really like Matthew Bergeron. I have since the summer, man. Like, it's just, he's another one of those kids. I just think it's such a clean evaluation, man. Like, he's a guy that is 6'5", 300 plus pounds. No, man, I think he's a tackle. I think he's a tackle because he's 6'5", he's 300 plus pounds. He's got 33 and 7/8 inch arms. So, like, he's got 34 inch arms, right? His length is good. It's an 80 plus inch wingspan. But his foot quickness is tremendous. He's got some of the quicker feet in this class, in my opinion. I think he can mirror match in pass protection. I think that he keeps his feet moving. As a run blocker, I think the biggest thing about a guy like Matthew Bergeron is his power profile is still developing. Like, there's some times in pass protection, for instance, where I just feel like his anchor isn't there yet, right? Like, it's still not there. But that's a thing. You can fix that, right? There's a thing called a strength and conditioning program. You can fix that. But I can't make a guy longer. I can't make a guy more athletic at this point in his career. Like, he either is or he isn't. He has starter level traits at offensive tackle at the next level. I think he can play left tackle. He also played right tackle early on in his Syracuse career, but mostly played left tackle. I think he could be interchangeable there. If not, could he play guard? Yeah, he could play guard. But I think he's a tackle at the next level, and I think he's going to be a starter probably in year 2.
Okay, before we get into a very interesting name that could be there at 51.
Okay.
Peter Skoronski, guard or tackle?
He's a tackle for me, and
bro, he's such a technician. It's like watching it's like watching Tim Duncan. It's so boring because he's so freaking good, bro.
It really is boring, isn't it, man? It's so boring watching Skoronski. I made this mistake a little bit with Rashawn Slater. I came around to Rashawn Slater late in the process, but I was still I questioned the size way too much in that evaluation. And I feel like I'm questioning that I didn't want to make the same mistake here with Peter Skoronski.
It's exactly what I did. I had Slater as a guard, and I said, I ain't making, went to the same school. I ain't making that mistake again.
Yeah, man, I still liked him a lot, but I did have some hesitation whether he was going to be able to stick it offensive tackle. 100% did. I would be fully transparent about that. Skoronski, I'm choosing not to forget I'm not going to overlook this one or overthink this one. Because for me, if you lack one, his actual wingspan was actually longer than I thought it was going to be. He only had 32 and sub-odd inch arms, 32 and an eighth or something, but he had almost an 80-inch wingspan. His wingspan was actually better than you would anticipate for a guy that has as short as arms as he does. But the thing for me is that you're always going to hear me talk about overcompensating traits when someone lacks something, right? He doesn't have the longest arms in the world. So what do you need to have? You need to have athleticism, which he does. Tested like it. He's a really good athlete on film. And number two is, you already hit on it a little bit. Technically speaking, hand usage is fantastic, man. He understands how to reduce rush angles. Like, he understands how to elongate rush angles as well when he needs to. He understands the game about as well as any offensive tackle to come out over the last few years. Wise beyond his years, despite only being a third-year junior. So he's got the technical aspect. He's a really good athlete. Yes, he doesn't have the longest arms of all time, but I think when you have those overcompensating traits, he could stick. If not, man, I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to be Zach Martin, because Zach Martin's a Hall of Famer, but like Zach Martin lights, like he's going to be a really good football player in that vein, in my opinion.
I agree.
Maybe
Okay.
Joel Bitonio. Maybe Joel Bitonio would be a better one. I don't know.
A name that's interesting, and I think there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance he might be there at 51, and that's because I think people were a little scared about Mekhi Becton, and this guy might be giving Mekhi Becton vibe. Dawand Jones.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts? Because the rumor I heard was that at his pro day, scouts were thinking he might be over 390, and he didn't want to weigh in.
I have such a man. This could be a whole show. This question, man, it really could be a whole show. So Dawand is historically rare at the offensive tackle position, right?
Sir,
You mentioned Mekhi Becton. We can mention Trent Brown as another guy that is similar-ish. And then after that, it's like Phil Lodeholt and maybe Bryant McKinney a little bit. Like, that's all you got, man. You have no – they're just – I mean, quite simply, there hasn't been a lot of guys in the world that have walked around looking like him. Like, you just haven't seen many, right? And I thought 2021 to 2022 film, 2022 was worlds better, man. I did not like 2021 film. 2022, I'm like, okay. Yeah. Never going to be a guy that bends at the hips incredibly well. He's a little bit stiff because he's over 6'8". He's 375 pounds. It's just not going to be his game. But he has good foot quickness for his size, and he's just a massive man. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to keep guys from getting around you as an offensive lineman, right? And it's hard to get around Dawand Jones. Like, that's just point blank to it, right? So I would take him in the second round as a talent all day. I wouldn't even think about it. The issue I have here, and this is a lot of stuff here, man. A lot of stuff. One, people were lauding him before the season, giving him big pats on the back. Like, wow, man, you lost 30 pounds. That's awesome. Cool. That's great. I loved it because I was like, yeah, man, he needs to lose weight. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl. He's 374 pounds. Why? Why are you 374 pounds again? Why did you lose? He was supposed to be down around 350 pounds. Now you're 374 again. Huh. And then I'm like, okay, that's weird. You did well for one day and then he shut it down. That's another conversation too, because he didn't tell anybody he was shutting it down. So there was a media availability for him the next day. He just wasn't there. Like, that's a different conversation for a different day though. So then recent, I'm like, okay, came in a little overweight. Maybe he'll come to the combine and he'll be back down. What do you weigh at the combine? 374, man. Same exact weight. I'm like, why is someone not advising this young man to cut weight? Because he needs to cut weight. He needs to play at a lower weight. 2021 was not great film. He was too heavy. And then to your point, I have a funny little story. I'm not going to drop the name here, but at his pro day, Dawand Jones chooses not to weigh in. No decision. Dawand Jones, wait, no decision. No weights. Personal decision, right? That's what kind of how they say it. There was a NFL head coach that was in attendance in the back of this group who yells, "His decision?" They're not happy about this, man. NFL teams are not happy about this. They're not. The guy is balloons, and I don't know why he's ballooning. It's the biggest job interview of a lifetime, and it's got multi-layers to it. It's Senior Bowl, All-Star Circuit, it's Combine, it's Pro Day, and top 30 visits and those Zoom meetings. Like, that's all the layers to this job interview. And I feel like he came out of shape to 3 of those job interviews when weight is an issue for him. And if there's just some questions about how much he loves football. And I don't like speculating on that, except he came on my podcast last year and I asked him about his background, and he told me almost word for word that he only plays football because he couldn't play basketball.
Wow.
So I'm very hesitant on the character work ethic. I should say character. He's a nice kid. It's not a character thing. It's a work ethic issue, though. And at the end of the day, if you don't love it, man, the grind's about to get real, brother. Like, it's not going to get easier here, man. It's not going to get easier. Guys are going to get quicker, faster, stronger. They're going to be working every single day. I'm not sure if Dawand's that type of worker. I'm just not.
Wow, that's so disappointing because of how talented he is, man.
He's man. Like I said, 2022 film. I have some guys that I trust, especially, and then I watched the film after I kind of got a tip on it. Thought the film was really good, man.
Yeah, it was.
Like against some good dudes too. I mean, he played against Notre Dame against Isaiah Foskey. Shut Foskey down. Shut him down. Like absolutely blanketed him. But then you hear some of this stuff, and you're just like, I don't know if I can bet on this guy, man. Like I just don't know if I can.
Guys, over 400 in the room. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Your thoughts on Jalen Duncan? Had a really strong 2021. Really fell off the map in 2022, and also a potential another right tackle guy who I feel a lot of people are split on. Wenya Morris out of Oklahoma. What are your thoughts on those two guys? And I just want to add, I know we're not talking about Paris Johnson or those guys, but how mean was the Broderick Jones film, eh? Like, he is just a mean man. He's fun to watch, but anyway.
He plays with the best base I've ever seen of an offensive tackle, man. Like, he's just always in a good power position. Now, Broderick Jones is a ball of clay, man. He could be as good as he wants to be at the next level. There's no doubt. Wanya Morris, similar conversation to Dawand Jones, man. I have some questions about how much he loves football. I really do a little bit. There's been some suspensions and back and forth, but talent-wise, kid's talented, man. There's no doubt. I honestly, at one point, he was a Tennessee transferred to Oklahoma. I would argue, just my opinion, there was at one time where Darnell Wright and Wanya Morris were the starting offensive tackles at Tennessee, and I would argue, just from a talent perspective, Wanya Morris is probably more talented than Darnell Wright. It's just Darnell gets it, right? Like, he gets it. He's understands. Jalen Duncan is a guy that I will bet on from a traits perspective all day, every day. My guy is incredibly sleek, athletic. I mean, you saw him at the Senior Bowl when he was playing left tackle, just running dudes around the track, man. Like, no one could beat him around the outside corner. Issues that I have with Jalen, though, which is why I don't think he's a year one starter. I think he's more of a year two, year three developmental type kid, is that his hands are really soft, doesn't land consistently, and he's just really passive as a player. Like, he's a left tackle only, in my opinion, because I just don't think he plays with grit. Like, if that's the best word, like, he's a passive player. And passive, I think we take negatively sometimes, but like, there's been some really good left tackles. Like, I think of Jordan Gross that used to play with Carolina. Jordan Gross wasn't a people mover, but he was just so technically good, right? Like, no one could beat him around the outside track. And I feel like that could be Duncan. I think he could really be a good starting left tackle in the NFL. But there's just going to be some things that have their drawbacks, right? It's the not incredibly physical, lacks core strength, passive approach that he takes to the game, which I think are going to turn some people off, but I do think he has starting level traits at left tackle.
All right, man, before we get out of here, because we're about to hit that hour mark, I just want to get two thoughts on two running backs. I'm a huge Devon Achane fan. I want to get your thoughts on him. But also, I know you're probably pleased to hear it, but Sean Tucker, it's good to see that he had health checked out, and he had a really strong pro day. And then another name I want to throw at you. I know everyone likes Israel Abanikanda and Zach Charbonnet potentially for us.
I like Izzy as well, man. I like Izzy. Yeah.
A name I'm kind of high on. It's just he's behind Bijan. What are your thoughts on Roschon Johnson?
Yeah, Roschon is, I mean, again, dude has a high floor for a guy that was never a starting running back in college, right? Because he had to sit behind a guy like a Bijan. Former quarterback recruit, surprisingly good blocker, man. Really good pass protector. Has pretty good hands, patient runner, decent initial explosion. Just not ever going to be a home run guy, right? Like, he's a Jordan Howard-ish type of back, which there's nothing wrong with. Like, he's a good football player at the next level, right? So I think that there's just a little bit of limitation as far as him being an every down ball carrier at the next level, a bell cow, if you will. But how many bell cows are there in the NFL now? Like, there's just not a ton, right? But a part of a right system, I think he could be a good football player. Love Izzy out of Pittsburgh, Israel Abanikanda. Man, he was one of my favorite evaluations I did down the stretch. Man, I didn't get to him to super late, Really love the vision, has home run speed. Everything is good there. And then Devon Achane, I think, is perfect for Miami Dolphins type of system, right? Like, it's perfect. Him and Sean Tucker, actually, they're both outside zone specific guys. Let's get them working laterally, and then let's find that one cut and explode. I really thought Sean Tucker's 2021 film was better than 2022, but I think that there was two reasons for that. One is they didn't run as much outside zone, which is weird because that's what Tucker excels at, in my opinion. And then number two, I didn't think the offensive line was great outside of Bergeron. Like, I thought it really struggled this year. But I think that Sean Tucker, as long as he's healthy and he's good to go, like, he's got talent. I could see him being a starter long-term on the NFL level potentially. And Devon Achane is Raheem Mostert. Like, he's Raheem Mostert reincarnate, right? Like, he's a guy that can, when he hits a crease and he's able to just find a little bit of an angle, he can turn it, right? Like, yeah. I don't think he's the most creative runner of all time in space. I think he's a scheme dependent, but if you give him an outside zone heavy system, he's going to be a good running back. It's just about getting him in that system.
For sure. All right, man. Great conversation. Always a good time. Go ahead, plug everything you got going on, where people can find you.
Sure. Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it. Sorry if I'm rambling again. I tend to do that with draft stuff, man. I tend to do that. Stuff. Yeah. RiseNDraft on Twitter, RISEN draft, like shake and bake, RiseNDraft. RiseNDraft.com is, if you guys just want some like verified information, some stuff on some dudes, prospect database. We also have a mock draft simulator if you just kind of want to go work on that. But, you know, Twitter wise, I'll be live during the draft, at least the first day. I'll be doing all that type of stuff, probably at irishbreakdown.com. So if you're a Notre Dame fan out there, which I don't know if there's Notre Dame fans on this channel. I know my dad is. My dad's a Dolphins and a Notre Dame fan. So like maybe there are some of you out there. Then irishbreakdown.com. You can go take a look at the content if you're Notre Dame exclusive, but RiseNDraft is everything NFL draft related for y'all.
And then guys, tomorrow, me and Neil Driscoll will be live. We'll have our hand selected 3-round. Each of us will have a 3-round mock draft, and we'll be covering a couple other draft topics. Wednesday, I'll be live with Ballgame and Richmond Webb for the draft edition of The Finish Line. Thursday, I'll be live for night one of the draft. And then Friday, we're going to have the panel for draft night. So we got a lot of draft content. And then for Patreons, I'll be dropping my quarterback, edge, and wide receiver big boards this week for all of y'all. But other than that, man, as always, appreciate you coming on, man. A good time. And you know I'm going to hassle you to come on with Dante after and talk about who we picked. Hey, that's if we even pick, because you never know. 84 and Cedric Wilson sounds real nice for Dalvin Cook right now, bro. I'm just saying. So
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. It's gonna be chaos, man. This year's draft, I feel like it's gonna be more chaotic than usual. But I appreciate you as always, man. I'll definitely be on again. There's no doubt.
Awesome, man. Guys, as always, have a fantastic evening. Until next time, fins up, guys. We'll see you on the next one.